Hey traders, it's John Fortune here with this week's weekly Forex forecast for the 1st of May to the 5th of May 2017. We're going to start with the US dollar index and we're going to run through a number of pairs and we're going to take a look at some key levels of support and resistance in the process. So I hope you all had a great week and let's jump into the charts and see where the money is this week. US dollar index. US dollar index has been sitting below this support area turned resistance for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days. In fact, it spent all of last week just accumulating in this area. We are going to have a bearish bias on this because it is making this type of flag pattern here, this kind of bearish flag pattern, which is a continuation pattern, so we would expect to see further declines here in the US dollar index in the coming week or weeks. Now, just a heads up before we start, there is FOMC on Wednesday and there is also non-farm payrolls on Friday, so you may find that traders were accumulating in this area last week because they are looking to these two key events, especially FOMC on Wednesday, to find some direction now in the US dollar index and to act as a catalyst for the next big move. But because of where it's sitting, which is under this resistance level now, we are going to have a bearish bias on the US dollar index. However, we are going to take most of these currency pairs on their own merit. Euro-US dollar. Euro-US dollar, we were expecting from last week a break up above this resistance area here. And we were also expecting maybe a tag of this resistance level. However, we had the European elections, or the French elections to be more specific. And as you can see, it actually gapped up past this resistance level, and it held at this resistance level that we had up here for a number of days, just as the US dollar index sat underneath that key level of resistance for a number of days, pretty much all of last week. So if we get a bounce here, we are going to be looking for a move back down to this 1.082 area. However, as you can see, it is trending up. This is in an uptrend. So if we get a break and we start seeing a break above this key level of resistance, we are going to be looking for a move up to the 1.100 psychological level and a tag of this major downward sloping trend line here. So that's how we're going to play the dollar for this coming week. US dollar Japanese yen. US dollar Japanese yen, we did start last week down here and we were looking for a pullback into this resistance level, and we were going to look for a bounce from here back down to this kind of support area down here in this downward sloping trend line. The move never came because we got a gap up right to this resistance point. We were looking for it to come down and close the gap. However, we didn't get involved in this pair, and it did in fact come and break back above the resistance level here, and also this median downward sloping trend line here. So we were expecting potentially a pullback to here, and we were going to look to take it up to this kind of resistance area here. However, we didn't really get a sharp pullback, and it has just started trending up and up and up and up, and it looks like it's trying to push through today. So if we get a bounce from this area here, we're going to look for it to come back down to the 110.25 support zone, which is here, and also maybe a retest of this median line here before potentially forming maybe a range. If it does break above here, we're going to be looking for a retest of this downward sloping trend line, and if we do get a break all the way back down below this median line and this support level here, we're going to be looking for this support to become resistance, and we're going to be looking for a trade down into the 107.57 area, which is this level of support down here. Pound US dollar. Pound US dollar, we were seeing accumulation above this key level of support last week, and we were looking for a move up to the 1.300 level. We did in fact take some nice trades in the pound US dollar last week. We didn't quite get up to the 1.300 level, however, we did make some nice profits. I am seeing a slight pullback now, and I am still expecting this to trade into the 1.300 level this week. So for the pound US dollar, I will be looking for longs into this 1.300 area this coming week, and I do expect it to trade into that area. US dollar franc. US dollar franc is forming this kind of head and shoulders. We see we've got the left shoulder here and the right shoulder here. We were looking last week for it to come down to the 0.988 area. However, it never really quite got down there. I mean, these are areas, so These aren't specific levels as we mentioned in the last video, and as you can see, it did come down close to this area, and after 1, 2, 3 inside days, triple inside days last week, it just basically contracted all week. We did get this push down. It actually failed to stay down here, so we are still looking for some potential downside moves here in the US dollar franc back down to the 0.98 level of support, or this area of support which we were looking at before. However, as you can see, it is starting to push a bit higher, so we are also cautious that we could be looking at getting a pullback to retest this broken resistance level. If we do get a move into this broken resistance level, we're going to be looking for a trade from this resistance level back down to the 0.988 area, which is down here. Only if we get a breakout of this trend line are we going to be looking for longs in the US dollar franc, and we will be looking for a long position if we get a breakout on a pullback to this resistance level, which will be acting as support, and we will look for a trade up to the 1.009 area of resistance, which is up here. Australian US dollar, Aussie US dollar, as you can see, is in this down channel here. You can see it's coming down, and last week we were stuck in this range denoted by these two key levels of support and resistance. We did come down, we got a bounce, and it came back up to the top. We got a turn around at the top of the range, back down to the bottom. We got a bounce from the bottom back up to the top, and you can see the gap here of the the French elections. And then we got a bounce from the top of the range back down. However, this time, rather than holding as it did the two previous times, we actually got a breakthrough on the Aussie US dollar. So the Aussie US dollar is trending down here, and we would be favouring shorts on this, potentially down to the 0.733 area if we are to see US dollar strength next week. Again, on the Aussie US dollar, we will not be looking for longs on the Aussie US dollar until we start seeing a breakout of this downward sloping trend line and this down channel. In which case, if we do get a breakout, we'll be looking for a pullback into this support area down here somewhere, and we'll be looking to take longs up to the 0.758 area up here. US dollar CAD. US dollar CAD last week, as you can see, there is a blue circle here because we did actually end the week up here, and in the last video we said we were looking for a pullback into this kind of area and this downward sloping trend line. This support and resistance level wasn't there last week, but we added this in during the week as we saw some more information on the charts. But we were still looking for a pullback to this broken downward sloping trend line, and we did in fact get that, and the move bounced from here and it went up to the 1.3582 area of resistance where we were looking for a potential target. It did actually start to push through that, and as you can see, it's been testing this key level of resistance at 1.365 as well, and we still are yet to see any kind of bounce or any reversal patterns here. So we do favour longs on this pair, and if we see this pushing up higher, breaking the psychological level of 1.3700 and getting a pullback, we would be favouring longs from the 1.365 area of resistance here, which will be looking to become support, and we'll be looking for trades up to the 1.380 area, which is key level of resistance up here. New Zealand US dollar. New Zealand US dollar, we were in this kind of wedge shape here. We had a major downward sloping trend line here, and we had an upward sloping trend line here. We did in fact have a trend line here, which was broken out of last week. Sorry, not last week, I think it was the week before. And we were looking for a pullback, and we were looking for potential longs up to these kind of areas up here. However, when we started to get this breakdown, this did look rather quite impulsive. It didn't look like the corrective pattern we were looking for, so we stayed out of this, and as you can see, it did actually start to break down. I can take this off now. Did in fact start to break down below this key level of support here, and also below the support of this upward sloping trend line. We did say once this is broken out that we'd be looking for a pullback into this area, two levels of resistance here of the upward sloping trend line, which was broken out of, and also this key level support, which we are now looking to become resistance. It is testing this fairly deeply, guys. However, I would still be favouring shorts down to test this major upward sloping trend line here into the 0.682 area, which is highlighted by this blue circle here. So we will be looking next week to see if we can get a short position on New Zealand US dollar down to this major upward sloping trend line here at the 0.682 level. Euro pound. Euro pound is a little bit in no man's land at the moment. we did get a test of this major support level here at the 0.833 area, and we were looking for a potential bounce back up to this resistance area up here. We did get it all in one go, which was on the gap after the French elections, and price started to come back down from this key area of resistance. It had been testing it again very deeply here, and it started to break back down below, and we are looking for a potential closure of this gap. You can see it's closed partially, this gap, and it has started to pull back. Now if we get a bounce from this key level of resistance, we could be looking at a move down to the this major upward sloping trend line here, which is also exactly where the closure of the gap would come to take place. So next week we will be looking at potential bounce off of resistance here, a retest of this area, and some short positions down to this upward sloping trend line, and also a closure of this gap that was caused over the French elections. Euro-Japanese yen. Euro-Japanese yen, we noticed that it did find support over here and it had pulled back. It had pulled back to this upward sloping trend line here, and for last week we were looking for a bounce from here further down. However, on the news of the French elections, you can see this movement that came up here. We never got to enter because there was no pattern here. It just went straight up. There was no reversal pattern around this area. And what we got was we actually got a break above this key level of resistance here, and we got a break above this key area of resistance here, and it went straight back up. I mean, we had no pullbacks here, no pullbacks here. It went straight back up to test these major downward sloping trend lines here. Problem we have with Euro-Japanese yen at the moment is it has 1, 2 downward sloping trend lines which are in the way of this resistance level up here. So for that reason, we probably would want to stay out of the long positions on this pair for the time being. However, taking shorts on this is also risky, as you can see the impulsive nature of this move up. So this is not really a currency we'll be looking at getting deeply involved with next week. There may be a bounce off of these downward sloping trend lines, and we may be able to get some short positions back down to this broken resistance level where it could act as support. If we do get a breakdown below this key area of support and this support level fails, we will then be looking for a move back down to this major upward sloping trend line, and we'll be looking for this kind of head and shoulders pattern like this. So we will be looking for a retest of the 118.46 area if we get a breakdown below and into this big space here. We need to really wait to see how the Euro-Japanese yen is going to play out. Pound yen, we did get a breakout of this kind of downward sloping, almost like a falling wedge, because it's getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and as you can see, the breakout, as expected, was fairly impulsive. Now we do have a gap over here which hasn't been completely filled. We were looking for this key level of resistance at the 144 area. Obviously, price did trade into this area last week. Now we may be seeing a pullback may be due on this pair. If we do start seeing some resistance and some reversal patterns coming in at this point, then we will be looking for a move back down potentially to the 1.40. The 140 psychological level here. As you can see, that sits right in with the gap, which has not been fully closed. So we will be looking for some short positions on this pair. If we start seeing it breaking down, we'll be looking at this kind of area, the 140 psychological level, for a pretty good target if we do get some short positions. If instead we get a break above this key area of resistance at 144, we're going to be looking for some accumulation in this zone, potential move up to the 147.64 area, which I do expect it to come back up to eventually. The question is it going to break down first before it moves higher, or is it going to break up and is it going to go up to the 147.64 level from here? We'll just have to wait and see how this pair plays out. Very similar to the euro yen, we did identify a bounce down here from the area of this downward sloping trend line. We were sitting just below this downward sloping median line before the French elections, and on the French election we actually got a gap up to this resistance area over here. We did get a partial close of this gap and then a bounce off of this median line. Price has actually started trading above the key area of resistance at 111.15, and as you can see, we're starting to see some selling coming in here. You can see the top of these candles, starting to see the sellers coming in. So we will be looking for a trade back down to this 111.15 area potentially next week, and if we get a move back down to this area and a retest of the 111.15 support area here. We will be looking for a move up and a retest of the downward sloping trend line, which sits roughly at the 113 psychological level. So that is the target we'll be potentially looking for next week if we take some longs on the franc yen. Pound franc. Pound franc broke above this key area of resistance at 1.265. It never quite came back and tested it fully, but again, these are areas. We were looking to actually take a trade last week from this kind of area, and we were looking to take it up to this resistance level potentially, but we were keeping in mind these major downward sloping trend lines. Price did continue as we expected, and you can see it just kind of tagged this area of resistance up here. So the question is now, we are sitting at major resistance here in the form of two major downward sloping trend lines and this key level of resistance. So we could see seeing a bounce to the downside here. If we do get a bounce to the downside, I'm going to be looking for the 1.265 area of support as the next target to the downside. However, if we start seeing this currency pair breaking up above the 1.290 area, which is here as resistance, we're going to be looking for some accumulation or a retracement or a pullback, and we are going to be looking at taking this essentially all the way up to the 1.3198 level, looking at the 1.30, 1.31 psychological levels on the way up. So if we do start getting a breakout above this key area of resistance, that would be nice, because we should be seeing some fairly nice moves to the upside if we get that. Alternatively, the 1.265 area of support is where we'll be looking at if we see a bounce from this area here. EurUsd broke out of this major downward sloping trend line here. We did get a little pullback here, but unfortunately, even though we were looking for this resistance area up here, this pullback occurred right before the French elections, so we didn't want to get involved in the euro pairs, especially the euro pairs, but any pairs really, because you could see over all the pairs actually there were some quite major gaps. We didn't want to get involved in them just before the election, so we waited it out. We did get this gap up, and we were looking for this gap to fill, and we were going to look for some longs up to the 1.4656 area, which is up here. And as you can see, price pretty much went straight to it. It tagged it here, and it got a really nice pin bar and a bounce from this level. So price could be looking at coming all the way back down to the 1.43 psychological level here, and it could be trying to close this gap that has not yet been closed from the French elections. Bear in mind, we do actually have the second round of the French elections this weekend, guys. So if you are trading euro pairs, you might want to be very careful about holding them over the weekends. Certainly something to think about, when it comes to managing any trades that you have on. But for the EurUsd, we will be looking for some shorts now down to the 1.43 psychological level, and we're going to see if they can close this gap next week. Once this breaks above the 1.465 area, we're going to be looking for longs to the upside. I do see it coming up to the 1.52 area up here, and this major downward sloping trend line in time. The question is, how long is it going to take to get there? The only thing that will make me change my bias on this is a break down below this major upward sloping trend line here. Then we'll start looking for some positions to the downside. But for the time being, I think the 1.52 500 area is where this could be heading longer term. EurCad, we actually got a breakout of this downward sloping trend line here. Price came up all the way the week before the elections, and as you can see, this was another pair we were looking to get involved with after a break of this major key area of resistance here. We were looking for a pullback and a move up to the 1.416 area up here and this major downward sloping trend line. Price never came back to close the gap. I mean, it closed it partially, you can see in this candle, but it never quite fully closed it. It then went straight up to this area of resistance, this confluence of resistance we were looking for. And it hung around here for about 1 to 2 days before actually pushing higher, and now you can see it's actually starting to close above here in the daily time frame. So we are expecting now some more moves to the upside, and we could be seeing them for the foreseeable future on this pair, as it has broken out of a pretty major downward sloping trend line. So the next area we're looking for is the 1.509 area of resistance up here. Bear in mind, we do have the 1.500 psychological level in between here as well. So we'll be looking for a pullback to retest the support level, broken resistance, which will be looking to turn to support 1.481 area here before taking longs in this pair, potentially upside. If we do get a break back inside this major trend line, I'm going to be looking for this gap to close, and looking for the psychological level of 1.4500 down here. AussieCAD was in this kind of range here. We've got a breakdown, came back below, came up, bounced here, came up to here. We did expect a tag of this resistance area last week. We got that, and our tag of this resistance area, we did see some sell-off, and we did see sellers coming into the market. We were expecting to move back down to this kind of area of 1.097 down here. Didn't quite make it all the way down before coming back up and breaking above this key area of resistance. So we could be looking at some accumulation next week in this area. You'll see this is a pretty strong move to the upside. So I would actually be looking to favour some longs on this position next week if we get a pullback and a retest of this 1.025 area of support, resistance that's going to turn into support, and we'll be looking to take long positions on this next week, potentially up to the 1.0349 area, which is up here. If we do get a breakdown below this area, again, we could be looking at this turning into a range, and we could be looking at the 1.0097 area of support down here as the next target to the downside. Aussie-Japanese yen. Aussie-Japanese yen, we were sitting on this major trend line just before the Euro elections. We did also have this key area of support here. We did expect a bounce up and a retest of this resistance area up here at 83.82. Price did come back up and test this on the gap. You can see it gapped straight up. It came back and partially filled this gap, and we were accumulating underneath here. We were looking for potential move from this resistance area to come down, retest this major upward sloping trend line and close this gap. However, it never really came, and as you can see today, it has actually broken up above this key area of resistance 83.82. So now we will be favouring longs up to the 85.81 area up here and this downward sloping trend line. So what we'd like to see next week is some accumulation in this area, a pause, a retracement, equilibrium, whatever you want to call it. And we'll be looking to take continuation patterns up to the 85.81 area of resistance on this pair. CAD yen. CAD yen, as you can see, broke down below this key area of support at 82.03, and it is now turning into a resistance zone. 1, 2, 3, 4 days here we have sitting underneath this key area of resistance, and I do expect this resistance to hold because there's confluence as well. We've got this downward sloping trend line, and I will be looking for shorts down to the 80.00 psychological level first, and then this key area of support at 79.48. Guys, this is a currency pair I'm going to be keeping my eye on very, very closely next week. I would say that this is probably looking to be a fairly nice setup. If we get a breakout above this downward sloping trend line and above this key area of resistance here, if this resistance area fails, I will be looking for a pullback, and I'll be looking for a trade potentially all the way up to the 84.78 area of resistance up here. But I will be keeping my eye, as I said, for shorts in this currency pair next week. New Zealand Japanese yen. New Zealand Japanese yen is kind of stuck in this range because it broke down below this key area of support here, became resistance here. As you can see, it came down and tagged this area of support, 76.05 area, and we got a bounce back up to the resistance area of 77.44. When price gapped up into here, we were looking for a move back down to the 76 area, which is down here. We did get that move. It stopped just shy, but again, these are areas, these aren't exact levels. And then we got a bounce, and we were looking for a bounce potentially back up to the 77.44 area. Now, depending on whether this is going to hold, we could be looking at a move all the way back down to the 76.059 area again from this area. So if we get a bounce and a retest of this resistance, possibly even a retest of this downward sloping trend line, we are going to be looking for a move down to the 76.05 area and potentially even down to the 7500 psychological level down here. Even though this isn't a range and you can play the range, you can buy here and you can take your profits here, and you can sell here and you can take your profits here. We will be looking to take shorts in this area, and we will be looking to potentially break out the bottom of this range here because, as you can see, this is in an overall downtrend. So we want to be careful with any longs you take in playing this range, guys. Best way to trade this, if you want to be safe, and you want to play this range, is just take the shorts from here and then wait for the breakout on one of these moves from this kind of level of resistance at 77.44. If we start seeing a break above this area of resistance here, we're still not going to look for longs on this pair until we see a breakout of this downward sloping trend line. Once we see a breakout of this downward sloping trend line, can be looking for a retest of this upward sloping trend line, but it would have to get through this before we even contemplated the 80.50 area up here. So we're looking for shorts, generally speaking, on New Zealand yen. Pound CAD last week absolutely flew above this area of resistance at 1.68 on the news of a snap general election in the UK. We did see price accumulating over here, and we did actually take a nice trade last week off of this, and we traded it into the 1.750 area of resistance and this upward sloping trend line. As highlighted in last week's Forex forecast, we did get a break above this upward sloping trend line and also this key area of resistance. I mean, it didn't really offer much resistance here, and that's at the 1.75 area. So now I am looking for a pullback on this pair to this upward sloping trend line, and I'm looking for the 1.75 area of resistance to become support, and I'm looking for this pair to trade into the roughly the 1.7800 area up here and a retest of this upward sloping trend line here. So I would favour longs on the pound CAD next week. Pound New Zealand. Pound New Zealand was accumulating underneath this key area of resistance at 1.83. We did get a break above this, and we had highlighted this major upward sloping trend line and also this area of resistance around the 1.88 area up here, and we did take another really nice trade in the pound New Zealand last week into this area. Took our profits here, and as you can see, it started to actually sell off. Could be looking at some short positions in this currency pair next week. However, we'd have to be very careful because this is trending up, so any short positions here would be counter trend. To look for the 1.83 area of support down here may be a little bit ambitious, considering this is in an uptrend. So I would really, to be honest with you, in this currency pair, I would prefer to wait for a break above this key area of resistance here in this upward sloping trend line, and I'd be looking for longs into the 1.900 area or the 1.904 area of resistance up here. That would be my preferred choice on the pound New Zealand, as I think selling into this uptrend could be a little bit dangerous. Pound Oz is fairly similar to the pound New Zealand. We were sitting just above this broken downward sloping trend line in the pound Oz last week. We did get a move up to the resistance area we're looking for at 1.717. It has started to break above here, and now it's pulling back. I wouldn't quite say it's fully broken below this area yet. We'll have to see what this does tomorrow and for the rest of the week. But if we start seeing price bouncing from this area, then I'm going to be looking for trades potentially all the way up to the 1.7790 area up here. We do have a number of psychological levels in here, the 1.74, 75, 76, 77. So these could all be intermediate targets on the way up to the 1.77 area of resistance. But again, I will be favouring longs on the pound Oz as long as it stays above this area of resistance. Turn support at 1.717. Aussie New Zealand. Aussie New Zealand, we will be looking to play either way next week. We have got this breakout of this downward sloping trend line, which is what we were actually looking for, because this is an overall uptrend, and this is like a kind of bull flag pattern here. We have got this breakout now, so we are favouring longs into the 1.103 area of resistance up here. However, we do have some major Aussie news coming out, I think, tomorrow morning. So we will wait to see how that plays out. If we do get a break back into this trend line, we are going to be looking for maybe a pullback and a retest of the 1.08 area before looking for a trade down to the 1.075 area, and we'll be looking at this as a kind of head and shoulders here. If the right shoulder doesn't come and we get some accumulation here, we will be looking for longs up to the 1.100 psychological level up here, and then even further up to the 1.1003 level or area of resistance up here. So this is another one to keep your eye out for next week, guys. We will be looking to trade the right shoulder if we get a catalyst to the downside and a move back into this trend line. However, we are favouring longs, and we are going to be looking at taking long positions on the Aussie New Zealand dollar for the foreseeable future if it can maintain this uptrend and if it can stay above the key area of resistance that we're looking at turning support of 1.084 here. Aussie franc. Aussie franc was in a wedge, inside a wedge, inside of range, so we really needed some direction on this. We did get some direction as it broke out of this range bottom here and also this upward sloping trend line here. We have seen quite a severe pullback and a retest of this area. However, from this position, I would be favouring shorts to the downside and a test of the 0.7350 area, and also a test of this major upward sloping trend line here, now that it is broken out of this upward sloping trend line and it is also broken down below this key area of support. So I'll be looking at this key area of support to turn resistance and push this pair further to the downside and retest this major upward sloping trend line. If we see it holding above this area of resistance here and it starts to break above, I don't see any longs in this currency pair, because this will be back inside the two wedge formations and also back inside this range. So again, it will just be a case of being patient with this and waiting for it to give us some clear sense of direction. Euro New Zealand. Euro New Zealand, as you can see, gapped up to this area of resistance on the news of the Euro elections. Never came back really to close the gap. It partially closed it in this candle. We were looking for a move up to the 1.57 area up here of resistance area. We did even get it. We actually got a breakthrough of this. We didn't really see much resistance here, and as you can see, it came back and it tested. We got a couple of wicks here. Has come back again today and tested it, and it is now sitting in this area, and we are looking for this area of resistance turned support to push the price up to the 1.609 area up here. We do have a psychological area of 1.600 in the middle here, so we'll be keeping an eye on this as a potential target, but overall we will be looking for this to hold as support and a move up to the 1.609 area. If we do start to get a breakdown below here, we could be seeing moves all the way back down to the 1.544 area and potentially even lower if it tries to close this gap over here, but as you can see, very, very strong uptrend here, so looking for shorts in this, could be a bit dangerous. We're favouring longs up to the 1.609 area. New Zealand franc. New Zealand franc actually broke down out of this upward sloping trend line here, and it did actually fall through multiple areas of support here as if they were just butter, and this was a hot knife going straight through them. We did almost come down to the 0.678 area down here, but we actually turned on the psychological area of 0.6800. We've seen quite a severe bounce in a couple of these pairs with the New Zealand. And as you can see, look at this, it's actually broken back above this key area of resistance at 0.686. It is, however, in a downtrend, so although there may be a trade, if we see some accumulation in this zone, there may be a trade back up to the 0.691 area up here, this resistance area here. So if you see some accumulation or a retracement, we could see a move up to 0.691 area. However, I would be favouring shorts on this as it's in a downtrend, and I will be looking for it to come down and test the 0.678 area of support more deeply down here at some point. CAD franc. CAD franc broke down this below this key area of support 0.744. We were looking for some pullbacks and we were looking to trade this down to the 0.7303 area, and as you can see, it did actually make that move last week. It has started to break down, didn't actually show much support this area. We've got a bounce here with this candle, but ever since then it just pushed down. As you can see, it tried to come back above it and they pushed it back down in this candle. So we are going to be looking for this pair next week, because we are going to be looking for some accumulation underneath this support turned resistance area at 0.7303, and we will be looking for it to come down and test this major upward sloping trend line around the 0.721 area down here. So we're going to be looking for some accumulation or a retracement or a pullback, and we are going to be looking for some shorts potentially in the CAD franc next week to test this major upward sloping trend line. New Zealand CAD. New Zealand CAD is in a major wedge here. You can see these multiple areas of support and resistance. It has actually broken above this area here, and it started to break out of this downward sloping trend line and the top of the wedge. It broke down below this area of support, which failed here, and it also failed on the way back up to become resistant. So we are kind of in a little bit of a no man's land here again. What I would like to see is if this does come down and it pulls back and it starts to accumulate in this area, I would be favouring some longs on this pair to the upside and to the 0.955 area of resistance up here. So I would like to see this maintain itself above the 0.941 area of support for a little bit longer before I consider taking longs up to the 0.955 area. If we get a breakdown of this area below the 0.941 area and it starts to accumulate, or we get a continuation pattern to the downside, we'll be taking this down to the 0.929 area of support here. Oil, we'll do oil because we know oil is closely associated with the Canadian pairs. Canada is a large oil producing country, so when oil is going down, you usually see the Canadian dollar affected negatively. And when oil is going up, you will see a positive influence being cast on the Canadian dollar. At the moment, what we're seeing is we are seeing this. It was holding at support for multiple days here at the 49.18 level, and this area of support was holding. We've got to try to break down below this area, and they pushed it back up. But we are now, it looks like we're starting to see a breakdown of this area of support, 49.18. This is in fact a continuation pattern here. As you can see, this is accumulating, and this is showing us that the next probable move to the downside is going to be coming shortly, and we would expect it to test this major upward sloping trend line here and this area of support at 47.12. Only if we get a break back above this resistance level and a pullback are we going to be looking for some oil strength, and we'll be looking for it to come up to the 51.18 level if we do see a bounce from this support level, and if it is just testing this quite deeply. Gold bounced at this major downward sloping trend line here, and it did pull back to the support area we had marked at the 1260 area. Now, it was holding on this support area for a number of days. However, as you can see today, it does look like it started to break down through here. So if this is the case, then I will be looking for this to come down and retest this major upward sloping trend line here. As you can see, it goes all the way back down to the end of last year. Now, I wouldn't be looking for any shorts in this position as it is in an uptrend. I would favour some longs potentially from this area down here. However, my preference on this pair would be a break back above this resistance level. If this has broken down, this will become a resistance level, and I'll be looking for a break back above this resistance level, and also preferably out of this major downward sloping trend line. So I will be really waiting on gold, and I'll be seeing really if we can get a break up to this 1300 area up here, and I'll be looking for a pullback and some accumulation, and I'll be looking to take this up to these kind of levels up here. Mainly the 1335 is the next area of major resistance I see, so could have some nice long positions in this gold if we can just get back above this major trend line. As you can see, it tried to over here but failed. It is in an uptrend. Generally, overall, it's actually in a wedge, but inside the wedge, it is actually trending to the upside. So I'd have to see a breakout of this upward sloping trend line here before I consider shorts in this in gold, and I would be looking in that case for a move back down to this support area here and maybe this upward sloping trend line here. So we're going to wait and see how gold plays out. Silver, we were actually looking to play the range last weekend. As you can see, it came down and bounced off of this support level. We never really quite got the reversal patterns we were looking for in the other time frames, in the lower time frames, so we didn't actually get involved in this. But we were looking to take a buy, and we were taking up to the 18.36 area up here. It wasn't to be, it started to break down, and as it started to break down, we looked for this level down here at 17.105, and we were expecting maybe a bounce on the confluence of this support area here and this upward sloping trend line here. As you can see, however, this has actually started to break out this upward sloping trend line, so this could spell the start of some fairly significant declines in silver. What we'll be looking for next week is a pullback and a retest of the 17.10 area of support turn resistance, and we'll be looking for this to push price to the downside. First of all, to the 16.65 area, and if we get a break of this 16.65 area, I mean, we could have a clear run all the way down to the 15.69 area down here, and also this major upward sloping trend line, which is the bottom of the wedge, which this pair did start to break out of, but it has actually collapsed back inside. So we are going to be favouring shorts on silver if we can get the right kind of reversal patterns, continuation patterns in the downside in this kind of area of resistance at 17.10. So that is it for this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video this week. Hope you found it helpful. If you did, let me know by liking and subscribing and sharing. I hope you all have a fantastic week next week. Remember to take care, because we have some really major news coming out of the US dollar on Wednesday with FOMC. We have some big news coming out of America again on Friday with the non-farm payrolls. And over the weekend, we do have the second round of the French elections. So please trade safely, guys. If you're not, if you don't want to trade next week because it's volatile, there's nothing wrong with that. Saving your powder, keeping it dry for a better day can sometimes be a good strategy, especially if you're just starting out. So all I have to say is good luck, take care, and I'll see you next week.